Hi everyone. You're listening to the Demon Consort's Cultivation Manual. A story of love, power, and a fate that spans across time. If you enjoy this story, please hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Now, let's see what happens next. Chapter 1. When Crown Prince Yunyan arrived, still bearing the morning dew, I was at my dressing table by the window. Outside, apricot blossoms fluttered down like a late spring snow shower. He did not enter the hall, but merely leaned against the corridor outside the window, eyes closed in rest. I watched him through my bronze mirror. The handsome young nobleman, in his 20s, sat alone amidst the apricot blossoms, and even his eyelashes seemed touched by the hues of spring. Broad shoulders, slender waist, truly, a gentleman as perfect as jade. Yunyan possessed an exquisite appearance. Even I, a consort of calamity, had to concede 3/10 of his beauty. Perhaps sensing my gaze, Yunyan turned his head to look back, his dark eyes seeming to hold a hint of a smile. I leaned out the window, propped my chin in my hand, and praised him honestly. "Your Highness is truly beautiful." Dai was long accustomed to my infatuation with beauty. She tilted her head to the sky, pretending not to notice. Initially, she worried about me, fearing Yunyan would grow angry and have me beheaded. But later, not only was I not executed for disrespect, but I also became a consort of calamity whom everyone resented yet dared not touch, and Dai finally felt relieved. Faced with my blatant teasing, Yunyan seemed unperturbed. He leaned towards me, his slender fingers lightly touching my cheek, and he smiled gently, saying, "Shuiji praises too highly. I find Shuiji more beautiful, Esp. Silly, this tiny vermilion mole on your cheek, it's truly lovely." His fingertips were cold as they lightly traced the mole on my cheek, and my heart suddenly constricted. The March sunlight could not penetrate Yunyan's eyes. Within them lay a layer of ice. He was right before me, yet his gaze upon me was distant, stretching further than time itself. I knew the person he saw was not me. I gently took his fingers, rubbed my face against his palm, and skillfully changed the subject. "Has your Highness come here because of my punishment and dismissal of Huang Xiaoxuan and Ji Fingyi?" Yunyan withdrew his hand, gently stroking my head as if comforting a ruffled cat, still smiling softly. "Such a punishment is a little severe, but there are too many concubines and maids in the Eastern Palace. It's time for some rectification. The Crown Princess is frail, so it's good for you to assist her a little." Of course, I knew he didn't care about these matters. Although Yunyan was born a crown prince, his position was constantly coveted by a pack of wolves, akin to sitting on a pile of kindling. The emperor himself was once the master of the Eastern Palace, but his methods to ascend the throne were not entirely honorable, so he disliked the crown prince associating with high-ranking officials, fearing the Eastern Palace's influence would grow too strong. Furthermore, the crown prince's maternal clan was the Xie family of Chen Commandery, and Duke Xinghua, Xie Huaiwei, commanded 300,000 northern pacification troops and had rendered meritorious service in assisting the emperor, which only made the emperor more wary. Last month, the crown prince married Cui Lanyi, the legitimate daughter of the Cui clan from Qinghe, making her the crown princess. Not to mention Lu Liangda, Li Qinghui, and Xiao Liangyuan, who had already been granted titles. The Cui clan alone was enough to keep the emperor restless. Yet Crown Prince Yunyan remained indifferent to all the noble ladies from influential families in the palace. Instead, he fell in love with a humble-born dancer and even dared to defy an imperial decree to request she be made a secondary consort, truly disheartening the great aristocratic clans. The crown prince's disregard for propriety sparked a buzz of discussion among the courtiers. An upright official even submitted a memorial denouncing the crown prince for favoring a concubine and neglecting his primary consort, the words so sharp they seemed to convey a willingness to bash his head against a pillar and die. The emperor was greatly pleased by this, and merely made a perfunctory remark. The crown prince and the courtiers drew clear battle lines, and no one near the imperial presence could rest easy. The relationship between the Eastern Palace and the emperor, too, eased somewhat. For Yunyan, I was only useful in this way. If I had any other use, perhaps it was to conveniently clear out some people for him. It's truly not easy to be a favored concubine as devoted as I am. Of course, the reason Yin Yan chose me from among so many dancers was even more complex. That, however, is another story. Van Dyne gave people the impression of a refined young master, gentle as jade and peerlessly handsome, with amorous peach blossom eyes. When he looked at you with those deeply affectionate eyes, surely no one could refuse any of his requests like me, right now. And he, being the crown prince, obviously wouldn't give me a chance to refuse. He said, Princess Thuong Nin's birthday banquet is in 3 days. You will accompany the crown princess. My heart tightened. The tale of the bewitching concubine that Dai Dai bought for me was not yet finished. My bewitching concubine skills were still so rudimentary, yet I already had to face the challenge. I was truly a little worried. Van Dyne probably noticed my hesitation and gently comforted me. It's just a normal family gathering. Even if you're a little impolite, it's fine. Just be yourself, there's no need to be constrained by formalities. I couldn't help but sigh. It seemed Van Dyne was determined to uphold his reputation of doting on his concubine and slighting his wife. Since he said so, if I didn't do something disrespectful, how could I be worthy of the title of bewitching concubine? Chapter 2. Folk rumors claimed that Crown Princess Thoi Lan Wai, raised in the boudoir since childhood, had a frail body and a soul as pure as an orchid. She fell in love with the crown prince at the beginning of year B. Anquet and vowed not to marry anyone else. The crown prince was touched by her deep affection, and thus they formed a fated marriage. In the eyes of outsiders, this fated marriage was clearly made a mockery of by a bewitching concubine like me. What outsiders thought was temporarily beside the point. This fated marriage between the crown prince and crown princess, even I, an insider, didn't fully understand. On the day I entered the Eastern Palace, Van Dyne specifically instructed me that the crown princess' health was delicate and she disliked being disturbed, so I didn't need to visit Jia Lone Palace to pay my respects. Thinking of his deep affection for his original wife, I could understand. Although I was a diligent bewitching concubine, I couldn't afford to anger the crown prince, lest I die before I could accomplish anything. Therefore, every day I diligently read tales of bewitching concubines. In the Eastern Palace, apart from Jia Lone Palace, I fulfilled my duties as a bewitching concubine, exerting myself to cause all sorts of mischief. In April, flowers bloomed profusely across the human world, but in Lingbo Garden, 100 flowers still vied for beauty, a riot of reds and purples. I sat in a secluded pavilion, trimming the lamp as I read the story of Daji. Just as I was reading the part where Bai Gan's heart was cut out, I suddenly heard the clash of weapons. In the dead of night, someone dared to cause trouble in the Eastern Palace? Curious, I pulled Dai Dai and stealthily went to see the commotion. On the jade-green pond, lush green lotus leaves stretched out under the moonlight, a bright moon shining down like a silver river. By the lake, a person in silver-white riding attire was brandishing a dazzling red spear as tall as themselves, looking incredibly imposing. I was just about to exclaim well done, when I saw the spear pointing directly at my hiding spot. Loyal Dai Dai shielded me, but the spear stopped right before her chest. Dai Dai, both scared and furious, shouted, "Who dares to assassinate her ladyship, the secondary consort?" A group of palace servants rushed over, their leader even more aggressive than Dai Dai. "You audacious servant, how dare you offend Her Royal Highness, the Crown Princess?" The person who had just held the spear, though tall and slender and dressed in men's attire, had delicate eyebrows and sparkling eyes, clearly a beauty. Dai Dai immediately prostrated herself on the ground, apologizing profusely while tugging at my skirt and winking a signal. I stood still, thinking, the crown princess, this frail body? The crown princess also scrutinized me, surprise in her eyes, and sighed, "So you are the demon consort Xueji who bewitched the crown prince?" Truly a face that could topple kingdoms, deserving of the word seductive enchantress. Her words were far from polite, but her tone was surprisingly sincere. For a moment, I didn't know whether to be pleased or angered. She then said, "Your mole." Saying this, He moved forward, seemingly wanting to touch my face, but before she could, someone pulled her back and shielded her from behind, as if afraid I would harm the crown princess. He said, "It's late. Please, secondary consort, return. The newcomer wore black, carried a sword, and had a bronze mask. He was Van Dyne's personal guard. I still didn't know his name, but his voice and build always felt familiar to me. The crown princess, who had just been so majestic and awe-inspiring, now looked like a delicate flower. She gazed at the newcomer with glistening, innocent eyes and said softly, "I was just feeling a bit down, so I came out for a stroll. It's a bit cold late at night. Would Imperial Guard Mu trouble himself to escort me back to the palace?" Imperial Guard Mu, standing before me, heard this and immediately took off his outer cloak. He whispered, "My apologies," then draped it over the crown princess and escorted her back to Jalwan Palace. Chui Lani turned her head back, smiled at me, and placed a finger on her lips, gesturing for silence. 3 days later, dressed in splendid attire, I accompanied the crown princess to Princess Changing's manor for a banquet. Ever since our accidental meeting at Lingbo Garden, Chui Lani had gradually grown closer to me. I knew she was skilled at riding and archery, enjoyed feigning weakness, and her hobby was reading storybooks, all of which were romantic or amorous tales. For example, right now, she wore magnificent court attire, sat upright in the carriage, and held a storybook titled Imperial Guard Xiaoshang, which made one shake their head. She read even more intently than I did when reading Tale of the Demonic Concubine, and when she reached a moving part, she even had to wipe away tears. As I watched her, holding the storybook with her graceful and delicate demeanor, yet recalling that night when she wielded a spear with majestic power, I always felt something was amiss. People said the crown princess was frail. Perhaps they meant her mind. When the Eastern Palace's sedan chair arrived at the princess manor, the outside was already bustling with people. Princess Thuong Nin was the daughter of Consort Wang and the emperor's only princess. From a young age, she was doted on excessively, leading to countless people currying favor with her. The crown princess and I alighted from our palanquins. Princess Thuong Nin and the various princely consorts were already waiting outside the manor. Although the crown prince had not yet arrived, the princess still showed respect to the crown princess. I followed behind the crown princess, greeting each person. Having only recently entered the Eastern Palace, I was of humble origin and rumored to be a demon concubine who had enchanted the crown prince, so no one held me in high regard, but I didn't care. As we entered the banquet, perhaps unable to bear seeing me neglected, Prince Van Kang, took the initiative to strike up a conversation with me, smiling as he said, "So, this is concubine Shuiji, indeed a peerless beauty." Prince Van Tap, who stood behind him, scoffed upon hearing this. I never expected imperial elder brother to be so infatuated. It's a pity concubine Shuiji has already entered the Eastern Palace, otherwise, you two would surely have been a match made in heaven. The first imperial prince, Van Kang, was the son of a palace maid, lacking a noble maternal clan and not highly regarded by the emperor. Thus, while other princes had married esteemed noblewomen, only the first imperial prince had yet to take a principal consort. In contrast, the fifth imperial prince, Van Tap, was the son of Consort Wang, favored by the emperor. His maternal grandfather was the left prime minister, Wang Man, and his princely consort, Zhao Lonyin, was the younger sister of General Zhenxi, Zhao Zhe. If anyone could contend with Van Dyne for the position of crown prince, it was only the fifth imperial prince, Van Tap. The struggle between him and the crown prince, which began 4 years prior with the death of the late Empress Xia Zhiyun, had become a battle to the death. His recent remark simultaneously mocked the first imperial prince, ridiculed me, and belittled Crown Prince Van Dyne. Chapter 3. The first Prince Van Kang was an upright and gentle person, who only had good intentions and didn't wish to bicker with the fifth prince. I greeted him and thanked him for his praise. Van Kang merely smiled and then entered the banquet. I turned back to look at Van Tap, casually stepping closer and smiling at him. I knew I was beautiful. The divine face master Yen Gui Tiao had used 1,030 knife strokes on my face, each stroke exquisitely precise, to create a face capable of toppling kingdoms and cities like this. Sure enough, he was slightly stunned, even forgetting to maintain his distance from me. I used a voice only he and Princess Yong could hear, and gently said, "I wonder what fragrance your highness is wearing, it truly is delightful." The fifth prince, arrogant due to his favored status, did not answer me. I didn't need his answer anyway, so I turned and left. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Princess Yong Zhao Lone Am fiercely pinching Van Tap, her gaze as if wanting to devour me alive. People said Princess Yong was prone to jealousy, and they were indeed not wrong. The banquet was lively, and I saw Van Tap leave the main hall. A moment later, I feigned dizziness and wanted to go outside for some fresh air. I instructed Dai Dai that if I didn't return within the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, it meant I was lost, and to tell the crown princess to look for me by the lake. I left Dai Dai at the banquet and walked out of the palace alone, passing rows of trees heavy with blossoms, until I reached the lake. The princess' mansion was grand and magnificent. The vast lake rippled gently, its water drawn from Lake Tai. Floating lanterns dotted the lake's surface like stars. I took out the fragrant sachet and examined it under the moonlight. The scent was too strong, I didn't like it. One side of the sachet was embroidered with flying clouds and soaring cranes in gold and silver thread, while the other bore an elegant embroidery of the character Tap Shi. The needlework, though not as exquisite as that of the palace maids, was very meticulous. Just as I was about to examine it more closely, someone snatched the sachet from me, and an arrogant voice rang out, "A lowly maid dares to seduce his highness?" I calmly looked at her, but an undisguised murderous intent flashed in my eyes, like a trapped beast that, with just one slip, would break its chains and devour everything. I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Princess Consort Yong, Zhao Lone Am, took a step back at my smile. I covered my mouth, smiling, and said enticingly, "Yes, I am merely a lowly maid, but I only complimented His Highness sachet on its fragrance," and he eagerly gave it to me. I stepped closer to her, the vermilion mole on my cheek glowing even brighter under the moonlight, red as a drop of blood. I whispered, "This sachet must have been embroidered by the Princess Consort herself. Such exquisite needlework, what a pity." Enraged, Zhao Lone Am raised her hand to slap me, but I didn't dodge. Instead, I knelt before her. Her face flushed with anger, she looked at me with a mix of fear and fury, seemingly unable to comprehend why I had suddenly surrendered. Footsteps sounded from behind. The Crown Princess, accompanied by her maids, came looking for me. Dozens of eyes saw me, slapped by Princess Yong, still kneeling before her. The Crown Princess stepped forward and, without hesitation, slapped Princess Yong back, hitting her face so hard it swelled. Forgetting her identity as a delicate noble lady, she pointed at Princess Yong's face and cursed, "How dare you bully the Crown Prince's concubine like this? Do you think the Eastern Palace is empty?" Princess Yong refused to back down, her eyes red as she tried to argue with the Crown Princess. I saw my chance. I flicked my finger, and the stone flew, hitting Princess Yong's shin. She stumbled forward, pushing the Crown Princess into the lake. I shrieked and jumped into the lake after the Crown Princess. The panicked maids jumped in to rescue them. I swallowed a lot of lake water. In a daze, almost drowning, I saw Yun Yan swimming towards me. I reached out but couldn't touch him. I had forgotten who I was, but I still remembered the young man reading under the apricot blossoms. "Life and death hung in the balance. If it was for you, I would willingly accept it." Chapter 4. At Princess Changing's residence, Princess Yong slapping the Crown Prince's concubine and pushing the Crown Princess into the lake caused the joyous birthday feast to abruptly break up. It was truly a huge incident. Princess Yong not only didn't admit her fault but also went to concubine Wang Gui's residence to protest her innocence. Prince Yong and his consort Sha read a deep and strong bond. He went to concubine Gui to beg for his wife's pardon. Of course, I was the one who took that sachet. But such an embarrassing matter, Princess Consort Yong could only swallow her anger. Even if she knew the truth, without proof, no one would believe her. She could only protest her innocence regarding not pushing the Crown Princess into the lake. But hadn't there been long-standing animosity between her and the Crown Princess? Previously, the one Prince Yong wholeheartedly wished to marry was Cui Lani, the legitimate daughter of the Cui clan. However, Chui Lani was devoted to the crown prince and eventually, as she wished, she entered the eastern palace. Only then did Prince Yong turn to proposing marriage to the Zhao clan. Zhao Lonam was the legitimate daughter of Zhao Ying, the former patriarch of the Zhao clan. Zhao Ying was originally a protege of Prime Minister Nan. Thanks to his skill in military strategy, he was recommended as the deputy general of the Western expedition, and later, due to his military achievements, he rose to become the general guarding the West. After the Nan clan plotted rebellion, Zhao Ying, for his meritorious service in exposing them, was granted the title of Marquis. Later, Zhao Ying was assassinated and died. His son, Zhao Zhe, inherited the title and, thanks to his fierce courage and talent, led the army of the West to guard Liang province. The Zhao family's reputation soared, which is why Zhao Luanin was always arrogant. Although she eventually had to humble herself and become Prince Yong's consort, a position secondary to the Crown Princess Chui Lani still became a thorn in her side. Normally, the two sides were fiercely at odds. This time, she pushed the Crown Princess into the water. What's more, with so many eyes clearly watching, how could she claim it was an injustice? The Crown Princess was frail and couldn't swim. After falling into the water, she contracted a severe cold and suffered from prolonged illness. The Crown Prince was originally generous and magnanimous and did not blame Prince Yong and his consort. His Majesty was concerned about the Crown Princess. The Crown Prince merely said the Crown Princess is ailing and frail. I truly cannot bear to see her like this, and my heart is filled with uneasy worry. Therefore, His Majesty issued an edict confining Prince Yong and Princess Zhao to their residence for 3 months, ordering them to stay indoors and repent. Dai Dai told me that on that day, when we fell into the water, the person Yun Yan saved first was me. She rejoiced for me, saying with a smug look, everyone says your highness' background isn't good, but His Royal Highness still dotes on your highness. Let those petty people be furious. The beauty in the polished bronze mirror was as bright and clear as moonlight. I felt a momentary pang of alarm and reached up to touch the vermilion mole on my cheek. Van Dien, is it because you feel guilty that you didn't dare let her die again? Even though you know I'm not her. Your Highness? Dai Dai waved her hand in front of me, her face full of worry, perhaps thinking I'd lost my mind after falling into the water. Before she could start nagging, I spoke first. Where's my 100-flower peppermint cake? Bring it here quickly, this medicine is bitter enough to kill a person. Dai Dai knelt with a thud, startling me. I have a sweet tooth, and Lac Tuchuan's 100-flower peppermint cake is my favorite, but dining in the East Palace has its rules. So, every 3 days, I'd secretly send Dai Dai to Lac Tuchuan to buy some to satisfy my cravings. These past few days, due to the incident of the Crown Princess and I falling into the water, the palace has been busy, so Dai Dai must have been too occupied and forgotten. Therefore, I disguised myself and, dragging along a terrified Dai Dai, prepared to leave the palace for a stroll. Before going, I also specifically went to Jialone Palace to visit the Crown Princess. That day, I deliberately pushed her into the water. Although I tried to pull her up, Boilan Y is a dry duck, so she must have choked on quite a bit of water. I originally thought she'd be bedridden for a few days. To my surprise, as soon as I entered the hall, I saw that frail Crown Princess smash a table in the East Palace with a single palm strike, likely because she was displeased with a plot point in a storybook. I was still hesitating, wondering whether I should pret and not to see her, when Chui Lani had already resumed her frail and sickly appearance, like she sure. As expected, Guard Mu once again blocked my path. I didn't understand he was the Crown Prince's personal guard, yet he stayed closer to the Crown Princess than even the Crown Prince himself. When Chui Lani heard I wanted to leave the palace, she was overjoyed and wanted to come along, but Guard Mu stopped her. Guard Mu sternly said, the Crown Prince has ordered that the Crown Princess' health is not well, so she must rest in the palace. Because there was still news outside that the Crown Princess was very weak and hadn't recovered from her cold, she had no choice but to be disheartened, only secretly asking me to buy a few more newly published copies of The Guard above all. Feeling somewhat guilty, I had no choice but to agree. After leaving the palace, I instructed Dai Dai to first buy storybooks for the crown princess, then come find me at Luosi Tavern. Luosi Tavern was the finest restaurant in Xinjiang, bustling with noisy, lively guests. I ordered 2 measures of Tanglua wine and a plate of mint 100-flower cakes, then found a quiet room on the first floor and sat down. Though it was called a room, it was actually just separated by curtains, so people couldn't see each other's faces. On stage, the performers were singing Pear Blossoms, not grand and splendid among all people today, none are like brothers. I leaned my ear to listen to the 2 lines and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Behind me, someone sat down, separated by a green bamboo curtain. His voice, weak amidst the noisy crowd, was nevertheless clear enough for me to hear. He said mockingly, "Princess Consort certainly has exquisite taste." Such an arrogant and unrestrained voice besides Prince Yong, who was currently confined to his manor, I truly couldn't find a second person like him. I tasted the Tang Lac wine in my cup, its aroma lingering in my throat, and I asked him, "Are you satisfied with my opening act, Your Highness?" Chapter 5. Yunji snorted coldly. What a Roxas blade! No sooner had it been unsheathed than it cut the hand of this prince. The 12 Towers was renowned in the martial world, a place that specialized in providing assassination blades to those who requested them. For years of forging, tempered and fire, were needed to produce a Roxas blade, killing with intent and never failing. And a Roxas blade like me, on the day I completed my training, was sold to Prince Yunji, becoming a blade for seizing the throne in his hands. When he said I cut my master's hand, wasn't he referring to the incident at Princess Changying's residence? I sighed helplessly. This person was accustomed to always wanting more. My causing such a stir, wasn't that exactly what Your Highness wanted? I dabbed wine on the table and idly drew with it. In the eyes of outsiders, I was merely an idle young master with nothing to do, just killing time. I said in a low voice, with my current status of approaching the crown prince, I would inevitably have an irreconcilable enmity with Your Highness. Only then would it appear genuine and trustworthy. Furthermore, that day when I fell into the water, the person the crown prince saved first was me. Isn't this the outcome Your Highness desired? Yunji didn't explicitly say whether he was satisfied with my performance. His voice was sarcastic. Our crown prince may appear gentle and benevolent, but his thoughts are unfathomably deep. He might bring you into the Eastern Palace, but he may not truly trust you. On the contrary, I am very curious, how did you know he would definitely choose you? I told him truthfully because ever since, the crown prince has always been searching for the family members of officials implicated in the Nam clan's rebellion. And my identity is Tangamdoi, the daughter of Prime Minister Nam's disciple, the governor of Wu Commandery. 4 years ago, left Prime Minister Nam Ba Hai and the crown prince's grand tutor, Nam Trake, conspired to incite the crown prince to rebel. Simultaneously, they sent a secret letter ordering former General Zhenshi Zhaoying to lead troops, under the pretext of purging the monarch, to help the crown prince force the emperor to abdicate. Although Zhaoying had been promoted by Prime Minister Nam himself, he was unwilling to commit such acts of treason and lèse-majesté, and therefore reported this conspiracy to His Majesty. Consequently, the Nam clan was exterminated. Tioch. Nam clan had numerous disciples, most of whom were implicated, either demoted or exiled. And the governor of Wu Commandery, Tuduat Fong, was one of them. The male members of the Ta family were exiled to penal servitude, while the female members were conscripted into the music bureau. However, Tangamdoi died of illness less than half a month after entering the music bureau, and the 12th floor bought her identity. When I saw her identity in the anonymous archives of the 12th floor, I felt it suited me perfectly. From then on, I became Tangamdoi. At Prince An's residence, I arranged for the crown prince to see me as a music entertainer, to make him believe that I was indeed the daughter of the Ta family, implicated in the Nam clan's rebellion. A searing pain erupted in my chest, spreading through my limbs. My hand, clutching the wine cup, trembled uncontrollably. I brought the cup to my lips, and the sweet, metallic taste in my throat fell into the cup, mingling with the wine's color. The azure abyss and yellow springs gouged my heart. My tender intestines were severed in the den of 10,000 devils. Indeed, this 10,000 ghosts goo poison truly lives up to its name. I lay prostrate on the table, my voice hoarse. Your subordinate admits their error. I beg your highness to grant the medicine. Yunji sighed, his tone brooking no refusal. Still as ruthless as before, this king does not like a blade that can still act on its own accord. If there's a next time, our death will not be regretted. An attendant brought up a plate of freshly steamed 100-flour cakes, one piece of which was coated in clear honey. Behind me, there was no one left. In the early summer breeze, carrying a stifling heat, separated from the bustling, noisy crowd, I saw Dai holding a stack of storybooks, looking around in the great hall. I swallowed that honey-coated 100-flour cake and waved to call Dai over. Dai and I strolled through the bustling streets all day long, only hurrying back as curfew approached. I bathed and tidied myself up, intending to bring the storybooks to the crown princess. She must be waiting impatiently. Dai was tired from the whole day and had fallen asleep, face down on my dressing table. I didn't have the heart to wake her, so I carried the stack of storybooks myself towards Jiaowan Palace. Although it was already dark, Jiaowan Palace was unusually quiet. Not even a palace maid or an eunuch on night duty was seen. I couldn't help but feel strange. My assassin's habits made me involuntarily lighten my steps, even my breathing was suppressed. A solitary moon shone down on the empty courtyard, two figures leaned against each other, their shadows cast on the long steps. Not even the drifting petals dared to disturb them. The falling flowers were silent, yet the whispers in the courtyard were particularly clear. Chimu, no matter what you want to do, I will be by your side. But my revenge, you shouldn't have to bear. The moo. Light disappeared behind the clouds, dark clouds billowed across the horizon, seemingly brewing a great storm. I thought I had accidentally stumbled upon a deadly secret, but it was clear someone else was eavesdropping. I quietly approached the dark corner and knocked out the eavesdropping maid. When she fell, she made a slight sound. Guard Moo was very cautious and seemed about to head this way, so I had no choice but to imitate two cat meows. He hesitated for a moment, then escorted Chui Lani back to her chambers. I squatted on the ground, looking at the unconscious maid. She looked very familiar. It seemed to be Tan Ni, the crown prince's personal makeup artist. I set the stack of storybooks I was holding aside, pulled out the golden hairpin from my hair, and gently yet decisively stabbed her in the neck. She didn't even have time to cry out before choking to death in her own pool of blood. Footsteps sounded behind me. I didn't turn around, simply asking, "What is your name, Guard Moo?" I knew I couldn't deceive him. As a martial artist himself, he wouldn't be so unguarded. I was waiting for his reply. He didn't answer, instead asking, "Aren't you afraid she belongs to the crown prince?" I wiped my hairpin clean and reinserted it into my bun. This is the Eastern Palace. He's a guard, yet he can freely enter and exit the crown prince's bedchamber. How could Yunyan not know? His question to me was merely to divert my attention. Since he didn't want to answer, I had no intention of pressing the issue. I simply handed him the stack of storybooks, then turned and left. As I was about to step out of Jiaolong Palace, he suddenly said, "Regardless of whether you are truly Su Yinshe or not, as long as you do not harm the crown prince and crown princess, I will not oppose you." I turned my head to look at him. Under the starless, moonless night sky, we couldn't clearly see each other's faces. I said, "If I agree, will you tell me your name?" Muchi. Muchi, or Chimu? Chapter 6. The moon had set, mist veiled the river, stars flickered faintly. A storm was approaching, and the wind swept through Fengman Tower. The wind extinguished the lamp, and he couldn't clearly see my face. He was only wary of why I wanted to know his name. I turned and slowly descended the long flight of steps, walking alone through the winding corridor, buffeted by wind and rain. This early summer rain arrived silently, without a sound, yet was enough to thoroughly drench a person. I stood by the edge of Jade Wave Pond, where fine drizzle fell. Water lilies bloomed profusely on the surface of the pond, and in the rippling water, a solitary, drenched figure was reflected. I reached out, unpinned the hairpin, and threw it forcefully into the lake, instantly stirring the entire emerald surface. As the water rippled, a tall, slender figure holding a purple bamboo umbrella slowly approached, shielding me from the rain and wind. His face, hazy in the flickering lamplight, was like something from countless dreams, making me afraid to look closely. I slowly reached out and touched his cheek, asking with a smile, "Your Highness, are you an immortal carved from jade, one who will vanish if touched?" He took my cold hand and gently wiped away the tears on my face. The tenderness in his eyes momentarily startled me. He too smiled and asked, "Shuiji, have you lost your way? I've come to take you back to the palace." It seemed that a long, long time ago, someone had said similar words to me. The venom of the myriad ghost goo had left my mind reeling, and gradually I could no longer distinguish between reality and dreams. I don't know why, but the sound of rain in my ears gradually faded. It was as if I had found a warm embrace, carrying the scent of ink both familiar and strange, yet it filled me with immense peace. Thus, I let myself sink into that dream, even if I were never to wake again. In the dream, I was lost on a desolate hill, sitting alone on a rock, crying bitterly, longing for the eccentric old man of the moon who never came for me. Someone trod over withered grass and dried branches, having journeyed beneath the stars and moon, and said they wanted to take me home. I couldn't clearly see his face, so I just asked him, later, "No matter how far I wander lost, will you still come find me and take me home?" He said, "Yes, no matter how far, I will take you home." In the dream, that person said he wanted to plant the back mountain full of apricot trees for me, so the I caught blossoms would be like snow, and even if I got lost, I wouldn't be afraid. After that, I couldn't wait until the back mountain was covered in blooming apricot trees. The dream dissolved. Opening my eyes, the apricot tree from my dream swayed outside the window, its blossoms long fallen, leaving only a body of lush green leaves. The handsome young man beneath the tree was Crown Prince Yunyan, who had brought me back last night. I felt a little uneasy. Yesterday, Yunji deliberately punished me, and the antidote he gave me wasn't enough to completely suppress the toxicity of the 10,000 ghost goo. Originally, it was just a needle-like pain that would pass, nothing serious. But then I accidentally learned someone else's secret, my uneasy mind was caught in the rain, and finally, after meeting Yunyan, I fainted. Yunyan sat beneath the jade-green apricot tree, and seeing me wake up, he smiled gently and waved at me. Being perceptive, I immediately rolled out of bed and knelt on one knee before him, resting my head on his knee, sincerely admitting my mistake. Shuiji knows her wrongdoing. "Please, Your Highness, forgive me." His lustrous black hair, like fine brocade, cascaded down. Yunyan gently stroked it, smiling as he asked, "What wrongdoing?" I immediately straightened my kneeling posture. "Shuiji presumed to kill a maid in Jiaowan Palace and offended the crown princess. I beg Your Highness for clemency." My absolute omission of mentioning the secret of Jiaowan Palace was to let Yunyan know that everything in Jiaowan Palace had been buried with the maid's death, and I would absolutely not remember a single word, let alone reveal any secrets. Yunyan extended two slender fingers to lift my chin, making me look directly into his eyes. He still smiled gently, but the smile did not reach the depths of his eyes. He was handsome yet distant. He murmured, "Ever since Shuiji entered the Eastern Palace, she has been constantly scolding and disciplining concubines and maids. Such an imposing demeanor makes me admire you." After the Nam clan's rebellion and the Empress' death, although Yunyan managed to retain his position as crown prince thanks to the formidable influence of General Xia, he also lost many loyal officials. Consequently, the Eastern Palace became weakened, not as strong as before, and was restrained by the newly appointed left Prime Minister Wang Min and the fifth Prince Yunji. Over the past 4 years, Yunyan has hidden his talents, now wishing to be a crown prince in name only, not associating with court officials or interacting with powerful families, simply dedicating himself to reading and cultivating his character. It seemed his only hobby was secretly searching for the families of officials implicated by Prime Minister Nam. Therefore, quite a few concubines and maids, some with genuine intentions and some with hidden agendas, gathered in the Eastern Palace. He kept these concubines for those with ulterior motives to observe. As for Me, eliminating these people for him, naturally, I had my own agenda. I wouldn't be so foolish as to think he was truly praising me. The only thing I could do was kneel even straighter. The servant knows her mistake. He lowered his gaze to me, his expression unfathomable. Yunji was not wrong. This person was profoundly unfathomable. The unfathomably profound Crown Prince Yunyan gently took my hand. My fingers were long and slender like lotus roots, my wrist fair and white like snow. He sighed, I never knew about hands like these. Shuiji appears delicate and boneless, yet her methods of killing are in no way inferior to the Bureau of Investigation and Surveillance. The Bureau of Investigation and Surveillance was independent of the three departments and belonged directly to the Emperor. It handled criminal investigations, imprisonment, and manhunts, popularly known as the ruthless officials. I couldn't help but tremble. Thank you for listening. See you in the next chapter.